Okay.
I'm still like reading comments.
That's okay.
It's so late.
You ready? She'll come. Okay, I think we're ready to begin. This is the time and place for the City of St. Helena Special Planning Commission special meeting on Tuesday, December 16th, 2025. And I'd like to ask, as we begin, before our call to order and roll call, if Commissioner Lopez would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Lopez. Ms. Guerrero, could you call, we're calling this to order, could you call the roll?
Commissioner Covell?
Here.
Commissioner Lopez?
Here.
Vice Chair Furtick?
Here.
Commissioner Anderson is currently absent.
Hopefully on the way, but
And then Chair Warner.
yes, here. Thank you. This is a time for public forum. Given this is a special meeting, we'll have our own public forum here shortly on the matters in front of us. But public forum for this purpose under our meeting, under California law, is public comments at special meetings are limited to subjects on the agenda only. Therefore, public comment will take place during consideration of the item. Each person's comments in the public forum shall be limited to 4 minutes. Do we have any public forum comments? I'm saying this afternoon, by the way, because it is this afternoon. A public forum comment? Sure. Come forward and state your name and address, if you could, to the dais. Thank you. Okay, now come forward over here to the microphone there. Take your time.
Sorry, wrong thing. Wrong timing.
Oh,
Agenda thing.
okay, all right. No worries. There'll be time for that. Okay. All right. Seeing no public forum comments, we'll move on to consent items. There's only one consent item, which is approval of the minutes for December 2nd, 2025. As we all know, any member of the public or the commission may ask that the item be considered individually. Of course, it will be because there's only one item tonight. Otherwise, we can entertain a motion for approval of the minutes unless there's a need for further discussion.
I motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. Shall we call roll?
Commissioner Covell?
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Furtick?
Abstain?
And Chair Warner.
Yes. Thank you. All right, we're on to our new business, and I want to frame this new business in terms of this meeting in a way that hopefully will facilitate as broad and transparent, open a discussion as we can have. First of all, this is a special meeting to take community input and comments and suggestions and recommendations on how we're doing under the zoning code update that was adopted in 2023. This is not going to be a time for
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Vice Chair Furtick?
Ooh, that's spooky.
That's all right. Who's that on there? This is not going to be a time for the commission to decide or debate or discuss anything, because our whole goal is to take comments from you in the community, in the entire community. And so we're going to be here to listen primarily. I do think it's important that we have enough time to hear all the commenters. We're going to be very liberal on what's usually the 4-minute rule, because I know a lot of you have some good substantive comments and recommendations and thoughts to provide. We're going to keep a record of that. This is not the only meeting on this topic. We're going to come back after taking a look at the record of the meeting, the suggestions, staff input, We're then also going to then try to make some recommendations as a commission to the city council on this matter. But I also want to say that I don't think this is the only time we will have a special session. I think this is something, and I noticed some of the commenters have suggested that the Planning Commission should try to do this periodically. Have an open session where all we do is really, and it's important, is we listen to the community about the zoning code and our planning process. So I just want to emphasize that. One other point I want to emphasize is this is the holiday period. A lot of you have come out and taken your time to come out during preparation for the holiday, as we all have. I'm trying to represent the holiday with my green and red. But I want us hopefully all be in the holiday spirit that is polite, civil, complimentary to everyone, and also informative to all of us on the commission, because that's what we're really here for. I want to stop a second and see if my fellow commissioners have any other opening comments that they'd like to make before we have staff make their presentation. Any opening comments? And again, we're going to try to keep, I think we should allow commissioners to have some questions for the commenters, but keeping that short as well so that we can provide maximum time for the community to provide input. So
I think the only thing I'd like to say is that, you know, obviously, this is a time where you get to express, you know, what there have been a lot of, I think, acknowledge that there have been a lot of improvements to the zoning code. I wouldn't mind hearing what you think has been most effective in those improvements before you also then talk about what you think can continue to improve. So I think that's the only thing I'd like to add.
Commissioner Koval, did you have a comment? No. So with that, I'd like to jump right into, we're going to assume that all of you who are here to comment have read the staff report and presentation. So we're going to try to not go through the entire presentation, but do a summary of it so that, again, allows maximum time for community input during that part of the meeting. So Ms. DeRosa, do you have a presentation?
I do. Thank you, Chair Warner. Good afternoon, members of the Planning Commission. The slide deck today is going to provide a high-level summary of what we set out to accomplish during the 3-year update process. It provides some context for people that maybe did not participate in that process. So forgive me if there's some background that you already understand and know about the project, but I just wanted to present where we came from in a holistic way. Oh. On. Forward. Maybe I'm not pressing hard enough. Okay. Thank you. Oh. All right. So an overview, which mirrors the staff report, is just an overview of the code, the accomplishments, what the process was, various comment trackers we had prepared, what are some of the key changes, what's working well, what's not working well, and other areas we might want to study for future clarification. Some requests that we've received along the way from businesses for amendments, some policy items for the council to consider, next steps, and as the chair mentioned, the majority of the session will be for public comment and discussion. So what does the code accomplish? So first and foremost, the whole impetus for the code update was laid out in the 2019 general plan that laid out a various number of implementation actions, such as creating design standards, creating a historic preservation ordinance. That's just one of some of the implementation actions we've achieved through the zoning code update. We added a mixed use zone consistent with the change to the general plan. It is very much an economic development tool. We did very much scrutinize what kind of uses should go on Main Street and change the use table to make sure it represents the highest and best use. We also provided design standards for more certainty for developers and architects of what's expected. We expanded the list of uses and added more uses by right. And we also created a parking exemption overlay, which is different than the prior overlay, as no parking is required and no in lieu fees. It also streamlined the permit process with more staff level reviews, and we significantly scrubbed the major design review findings, reduced them down to 2 to eliminate any arbitrary findings. Oh dear. I might need to have you do it, Zinnia. Thank you. And what does the code accomplish? Continuing that discussion, facilitating multifamily development. So this intersected with a number of housing streamlining bills that required that we adopt objective design standards that are prescriptive in nature, that we no longer require CUPs for multifamily development. So that's where some of the ministerial reviews come in. And also we look to reduce parking requirements, particularly in our residential multifamily areas. It's also compliant with federal, state case law. We did not previously had a telecommunications ordinance, and we added that. And as I mentioned, the legislative updates related to housing laws, and then updated the sign code to be consistent with the Supreme Court case Reed versus Gilbert. We also added, this was a request by both the Planning Commission and the public, to create land use tables. So on one page you could compare across a variety of zoning districts. We added illustrations and graphics and rules of measurement. And so this is just a timeline that shows in 2019 when they hired the consultant, and we started the public meetings in 2020. Some of those actually went over to virtual after starting off in person because of the pandemic, but then we switched back into multiple variety of meeting formats, both subcommittee meetings, stakeholder meetings with downtown merchants. We had joint meetings of the Planning Commission, the council, and every time we had those, we would go back and make further amendments. We took public comment during all of those processes, which culminated in public hearings and adoption in 2023. And this is an example that you could look at, particularly in the adoption hearings, a culmination of the public comments received and how were they addressed in the staff report. And the shaded ones represent areas where a change was made to the code. We had multiple separate trackers for a number of frequent commenters. And then we also, yeah, so we can go on to the next one. But this basically shows we had over 440 comments submitted and responded to. So the table of contents in the new code is consistent to 5 parts, starting with general provisions. We have an administrative and procedure section in part 2. The core content of all the development standards and use regulations is in part 3. Specialized city standards such as temporary uses and how do we deal with landscaping and lighting are all in part 4. And then we created 3 sections in part 5 for uses and definitions. So we have sections for terms, sections for uses, and rules of measurement. And so specifically part 3, like which I was mentioning, is the kind of the meatiest part of the code, that if someone's building a project, they would spend the most time in there. So we have our base zoning districts, residential zoning districts, commercial mixed-use zoning districts, our business and community agricultural natural resource zoning districts, public and open space zoning districts, a number of overlay districts, a section on specific to uses, and then a reserve section. And one of the facets of the code that basically, again, took direction from the general plan, the Appendix A to the general plan listed over 200 properties that were eligible according to the general plan for listing. Then we scrutinized that list and went through building permits and what buildings had changed, and came up with a local register and a preservation overlay map in the code. And then also a new change is we created objective design standards. This is an excerpt from section 1716.040, which we worked very closely with the city attorney because, again, this intersected with a lot of the new state laws that said all of your objective standards must meet the prescriptive test. So we have to have and so this example here that shows the roof ridge differentiation of 18 inches, the offsets, are examples of a prescriptive standard. And we also knew that there were concerns about building massing and proportionality, so we added requirements that related to reducing building massing in the objective design standards. So what's working at a high level, we do think it was a good thing for applicants and people that are looking to obtain their permits faster to add a minor design review process and minor use permits. So that's just a staff level review, no planning commission, formal public hearings. And then we also removed the CUP requirement for multifamily, as I had mentioned earlier. The table of comparing uses across in one section is super helpful. And we also, something new that is, I think, helpful, because we would get this question a lot is, oh, what standards do I have to provide for bicycles or EV chargers? So codifying that makes it really clear as well. The approval authorities in Table 2 makes it easy to figure out who is the final decision-making body. Is it the Community Development Director? Is it the Planning Commission or the Council? And also who are the appeal authorities for that? As I previously mentioned, this parking exemption district, which, by the way, somewhat mirrors our downtown-specific plan boundary, but that's been like a real win for our businesses, because they basically, the only caveat is if there's existing parking on that lot, they have to maintain the parking. But even if they're intensifying the use, they don't have to provide extra parking or pay into the in lieu fee. We disbanded the in lieu fee until we have further information about if there's truly a parking problem in the city. We reduced the parking requirements for multifamily. Our minor modification process is like a mini variance, and it creates an opportunity for someone to get smaller variation of relief from the code. We knew that there were some concerns about privacy standards, so we created that particularly helpful for when second stories are being built next to another second story or looking down on someone's yard. That just helps with window placement. And then something that was in the general plan as an implementation action was noting that we should really look at our environmental resources and protect the line of development between our waterways. And since we do have a number of creeks and, of course, the Napa River, we want to make sure there's no development conflict. So we actually set specific standards for that in the code as well. The A20 went through a major overhaul. We significantly reduced the allowed building area in that particular area as a result of very large obtrusive buildings pattern that had started to be established prior to the code update. And then our temporary use permit process continues to be an economic development driver, and I think a win for our businesses. And then the design standards also help staff give good feedback to applicants on what's going to meet the intent of the code. So what's not working? So I believe it's the second attachment to the staff report is a matrix with a working list of changes as we adopted the code and saw things that could be cleaned up. We have that, just sharing that, which is not part of my presentation, but we do have it on the desktop if we do want to take a look at that at some point. We have the sign code, which although we've added quite a lot of illustrations and much more standards to it, some of the feedback from my staff is that there's just many sections and parts. You have to look at one section, then cross-section another part, and so it is quite a lot for staff to navigate, for better or worse. And then we realized that in our temporary use permit ordinance, after taking through some very large events through the process earlier this year, that we have loopholes that allow non-commercial properties to renew a temporary use permit multiple times in a year that could create a pattern of almost having a quasi-commercial use on what might not be the most compatible area for that type of intensification. So that is on our list of things to bring back to the Commission and Council with a red line ordinance. And then our industrial design standards, we did have a project earlier part of this year, Olivier Olive Oil Warehouse, where they were looking to, this was probably one of the first projects that we tested on our industrial design standards. And so if you can see up in the top right corner is what their original front elevation looked like. And then as we looked further into 1718040, there's specific criteria, and one of them requires a recessed entry. So they did amend their proposal, which you can see at the bottom of the screen, to provide that. But at what cost, and is that really something that truly is beneficial and makes that much of a difference for an industrial project? So we would probably take a second close look at that and maybe remove that standard. Next. And another area of the code that has come up for us and having to interpret is 1724.030, architectural features. We currently don't have a definition of that, although there's some examples provided in the code that it may relate to a bay window, for example. But I think there's other people that have other more broader interpretations of that. So we would like to, one of the things we'd like to do is add an actual definition to the code of really what qualifies as an architectural feature. And then I believe we also received a comment about measuring fractions and what's the best way to do this just to make it really clear. And so one suggestion is that if we end up with a fraction that needs to be, we would round it up to the next whole number rather than having fractions involved. Next slide. So one caveat, this is not from St. Helena. I don't want anyone to be worried about that. But this is similar to a example of another project that was submitted to us for staff review and comment about competing roof forms. And we realized that we don't actually have any objective standards related to doing an addition that doesn't relate to the existing structure. Next slide. And also outlined in the staff report, I noted a couple of comments from our business community. One involves allowing outdoor storage to be accessory to a primary use. And having that in the CB zone, and also actually we would also want to probably look at having that in the MU zone as well. And then also we've received a request from a local winery to consider adding can they have a tasting room with the CUP in the industrial district? Currently, that's not allowed. I think the background behind that is to say no, the commercial district is the commercial district. We want to make sure those districts thrive with tasting rooms and move those activities there. But we also know the wine industry is going through a challenging time. And so would this be something that we should make as a permanent change to be more business friendly? And then in a recent meeting that I had with the Culinary Institute of America, which is great that they're looking to expand student housing in the city and even on their Greystone campus. But with it being zoned A20, it hasn't really conceived of student housing. And actually, that's really not even in the codes. That'd be something either they would bring forward at the right time, or we could consider proactively making that change. Next slide. And this issue of ADUs and density, for those of you that participate in the Planning Commission hearing in 2023, there was some discussion about, we've had this ability to still count ADUs and JADUs towards density, and with some of the larger lot, that's been helpful to some applicants. But at the same time, we realized that being true to the density requirements, ADUs aren't really delivering the type of housing that the community needs, and they're not really being utilized by families, let alone even being rented out very commonly. Next slide. And then the drive-through. So one question has recently come up that we could change the code is, do we think because of our small town character that we should just prohibit drive-throughs in all zones? Because currently right now, the only drive-throughs that are prohibited is if it's a full-service restaurant. So as you can see with A&W being a fast food, which it's a formula business, so it's non-conforming from that perspective. But there's not full clarity on, how we really want to treat drive-throughs in the city. Next slide. So getting to the end of the presentation, our next steps, as I mentioned, there's this matrix that's attached to the staff report with the little red X's, and Aaron Heacock, our former senior planner, had, before he left, created a red line of here's some changes that we can bring when we're ready, and do we want to package them all together or take some of them one by one? So those are ready to go. But knowing that the commission asked that we bring this holistic report back to you post, a year and a few months post, 2 years almost from the zoning code adoption. So one path forward is that, as the chair had mentioned, today is just listen, receive feedback, and then we would bring a summary of that public feedback commission discussion to a future planning commission meeting, and then those recommendations could be more formally forwarded to the council for their final direction. And so with that, that concludes my part of the presentation, and I'm available for questions, or I will turn it over to the chair.
And I think just for the purpose of timing, we can, again, because we're not discussing or deciding anything tonight, I'd like to move, if it's okay with my fellow commissioners, immediately into providing for the community input. And I'd like just to start, if those of you who are interested in providing oral comments could raise your hands, let us know how many you have. Good, I think we have plenty of time. So I'm not going to suggest a time limit on any of you, but I would like you to defer to your fellow commenters so that basically there's plenty of time for everybody to get their comments in and to be full and informative. So if you can, yes, go ahead, Commissioner Covell.
Just because I wanted to address something that you had said earlier.
Sure.
That we would be listening. I think you asked me before in previous planning commission that since my background is architecture, that I would be able to bring forth things that I've noticed in the code as well. So today I did do a lot of homework, and I do have a lot of things to bring forth. So on top of just listening to everybody, which I really appreciate everybody coming today, I hope I'm afforded some time to speak as well.
Sure, let's see where we are at the end of the discussion. And again, if you've got anything in writing, because all of us as commissioners can certainly provide something in writing as part of our upcoming discussion after this meeting too.
I have tried my best because it's a lot of documents, and I pulled stuff. I'm going to do it as quickly as possible.
Okay.
And I can follow up later with a bullet point, but I have not yet drafted up a bullet
Okay.
point.
Let's maybe do that at the end of the public discussion, see if we have plenty of time for that, if that works. Okay, let's open it up for the public comments one by one. And again, please be deferential to your fellow commenters in terms of the time that you use. Thanks for coming. And remember, state your name.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Feeney. First of all, thank you to everyone for being here on a special evening and in the holiday spirit. Thank you very much. I just want to comment on the drive-through aspect. Obviously, the A&W has an existing drive-through. As I think people travel and use different modalities today, whether that's through Uber Eats or taking food away from a restaurant and not dining in there, especially fast food restaurants, drive-throughs make a lot of sense. We happen to have one in town. I think it would be an atrocity to lose that usefulness to that building and the service to the community and that business. So I would support you to, if nothing else, have the code read that any new drive-throughs would be considered, but there's not any type of violation or non-compliance for existing drive-throughs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next commenter.
Hello, my name is Elliot Bell. I'm the chef owner of Charlie's Restaurant in the old Cindy's Backstreet Kitchen space. I'm here to specifically address concerns of operating a business in the Central District and the challenges with the current zoning code, specifically 17.17020. This code prohibits in the Central Business District any on-site storage facilities, meaning the indoor or outdoor storage of any materials, products, or equipment on the premise. For us, this code is extremely difficult. Like many other restaurants in town, we need to store some items outside. We have a wood-burning hearth outside where we get a cord of wood delivered every week. So for us, it would be unsanitary and improbable to be able to store that wood inside the actual restaurant. And with our building being so old and being designed over 100 years ago, we need the ability to store some items outside of the building in a clean and safe way that corresponds with the look and organization of the downtown business district and the council's vision for that area. So we'd love the support in amending the code to allow for us to safely and in accordance with the overall vision of look of the downtown area to store some goods outside with a permit. So I think also, as you mentioned before, it would be helpful in the future to engage with the small businesses downtown prior to anything going into action, that we could voice concerns and help kind of avoid these issues in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Chef. Thank you.
Wayne Leong, 1145 Crane Avenue. I'd like to address some of what was presented by Maya, and particularly the section where it says facilitating multifamily developments. So most of my comments are pretty much driven by the Spring Grove project. And I think a lot of what was adapted to facilitate multifamily developments has created Spring Grove development, which certainly not only in my opinion, but a big part of the community, as we got 133 signatures against the project because it does not conform to the neighborhood. There's questions whether...
Mr. Long, I'm going to let you talk about Spring Grove in a general sense.
Yes,
but Spring
I am,
Grove,
sir.
and
Please.
since it's not in front of us, and I appreciate that you are talking about it in a general sense and not as an agenda item because of course
Yes.
Brown Act. So I'm going to let you do this, but I want you to understand that anything specific to Spring Grove is not in front of us because it's in front of the City Council.
I understand, but
That's fine.
We
Thanks.
have in our community an example of what the zoning ordinance has produced. A good example where things were adopted that produce something that no one wants. So let me get started, if you don't mind. Uninterrupted, sir.
Fair enough. I just want you to understand that Spring Grove specifically is not in front of us.
I totally understand that,
Okay,
sir.
go ahead. Spend your time. We got plenty of time.
I created a memo. I'll just read from my statement that she's handing out right now. The Spring Grove project is a perfect example of why the zoning code needs to be changed. Spring Grove complied with the city-adopted standards and state housing law. Yet, it produced an outcome that many in the community and on this commission found unacceptable in scale, massing, and impact. That result was not an accident. It was the predictable consequence of how the code is written and applied. Spring Grove should therefore be treated as a case study. Clear evidence that the current framework is producing results the city did not intend. The first item, there's only 5 items that I'd like to introduce that I think can easily be adapted into the zoning code. The first one, residential density was calculated on gross acreage, including land that cannot be built on, creek corridors, required setbacks, private streets, and bioretention areas. This artificially inflated density and forced a higher unit count. State law does not require this approach, and St. Helena itself used net developable area in the past. This was verified by the person that was hired by the city. She presented, I forget her name, Barbara Kotz. So along with that first item, the second item is density ranges were treated as the mandatory minimums, not permissive range. The project was described as the minimum number of units that could be built, converting an allowed range into a production mandate. That interpretation is not required by law and eliminates lawful discretion. The following sentences could be added to the zoning code. Residential density ranges establish the allowable development intensity for a site and shall not be constituted to require development at the minimum densities. Projects may be approved below the minimum density when objective, documented conditions limit feasible development. I think Spring Grove is a very good example of this statement. So if we did actually take the net developable area, we would not end up with 41 units. So ridiculous is this project that, I'm just going to quote this, my experience. I went to the community outreach, and they were taking community input about the Spring Grove project. And I went up to one of the people manning one of those boards, and I said, wouldn't it be a good idea if you had a front door? And he wrote down, oh, good idea, thank you. And I said to him, if you added a front door to these units would end up in the creek. That's how tightly they had pushed the limit. So obviously, if there was some leeway in the minimum density, they could maybe take out 1 or 2 units, and then everyone could have a front door. Instead, they defined the back street driveway as the front and the back as the front to get around those ridiculous rules. Third item, the project's architecture, site layout, massing, and landscaping were approved ministerially, leaving no opportunity for Planning Commission design review. Once objective standards were met, staff was legally required to approve the design, even if the results was inconsistent with neighborhood context. The zoning code should be revised. The following residential development projects shall be subject to discretionary design review by the Commission, and shall not be eligible for ministerial approval. Number 1, residential developments containing 20 or more dwelling units should be under discretionary review. Residential buildings exceeding 2 stories or 35 feet, whichever is more restrictive. Residential developments requesting 1 or more density bonus waivers, concessions, or incentives. Residential developments located adjacent to or containing riparian corridors, waterways, floodways, or environmentally constrained areas as identified in the adopted city plans or maps. I noticed in the facilitation that the setbacks to creeks were reduced. Residential developments with floor area ratio exceeding 0.6. Spring Grove is 1. Fourth item, density bonus waivers were granted without requiring proof that each waiver was truly necessary rather than merely convenient. State law allows waivers only when standards would physically preclude development and the city can lawfully require stronger findings. And fifth, the city's 15-year-old water neutrality ordinance is plainly inadequate for today's water supply and quality challenges. While Spring Grove cannot be denied on that basis due to vesting, it demonstrates the urgency of updating the ordinance for future projects. In my opinion, the city should put a moratorium on high development projects until the water neutrality ordinance can be modernized. So in summary, the commission should recommend immediate prospective amendments to the following: calculated densities of net developable areas rather than gross. Clarify that density ranges are permissive, not mandatory quotas. Require discretionary design review for large or sensitive residential projects. Strengthen density bonus waiver findings, and modernize the water neutrality. So it's obvious to me, in my opinion, a lot of what was to facilitate multi-family developments created the problem that we're all confronting at this point. And unless their language is put into it, the same thing is going to keep happening. Spring Grove will end up being the model of future developments. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Leong. Next.
Hi, my name is David Crimmins. I'm an architect, and I just noticed an inconsistency in the zoning code to bring up. I'm doing some planning and setback analysis for a corner lot in an MR zone, specifically Scott and Hillview. And so it has to do with the second floor step back. So like so we got the front setback, the side yard setback, and then the street side setback. So we're on a corner lot, so we got a street side setback. So going through like the front setback, which works most people would agree it works great, meaning if you have a one-story house in the front, you have a 20-foot setback. If you want to put a second story on that, an additional 8 feet. So the first floor stays at 20 feet, and then the second floor gets stepped back an additional 8. So they don't both step back, just you get it. And then in the same spirit on the side yard setback, it's a 5-foot setback for a first floor. And if you have a 2-story house, then the second floor gets stepped back an additional 5 feet, so a total of 9 from the, right? So the first floor stays at 5, and the second floor is 9 feet, right? So that works great because you have that you're breaking up the massing and it's aesthetically pleasing, particularly on the front. And you don't have like, a 2-story wall facing the neighbors or a 2-story wall facing the front yard, so it works great. But, and this is the inconsistent part, just to bring to your attention, and admittedly it is affecting how I planned this project out, but we're not even into planning yet. So for the street side setback, a 1-story house would be 15 feet from the property line. And if you have a 2-story house, then both that ground floor and the second floor go to 20 feet. So instead of having a second floor step back like you do in the front and the side yard, they both get a 20-foot setback. Is that, you guys following?
Yes.
And so what you end up with is encouraging someone to have a 2-story wall facing your street side setback. So if it was me, I would modify that section of the code so the second floor gets stepped back from the ground floor. Now, I mean, just doing the numbers, I would, in the same spirit as the front yard, I would keep the first story a 15-yard setback. And then if you have a 2-story house, then that has to be a step back an additional 5 feet, perhaps. That would be reasonable. And you would not encourage having basically a 2-story wall facing the street. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that's all, and that's that.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Crimmins. I want to just note, and this is very valuable to the commission, you provided your comments in advance in writing. They're part of the record, and that also gives all of us as commissioners a chance to review your comments in advance as well. And I want to also compliment the rest of the commenters who did file written comments. All those will be part of the written record. They're going to be available for all of us to review. So thank you for doing that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Next commenter.
Anybody need this? Hello, I'm Mary Stevenson. I'm speaking as an individual, not representing any group. And I would like to say that I do think that the update of the general plan was well done. It was a tedious process, and I think there was a lot of changes made that were really worthwhile, cleaned up a lot of stuff, so that's a good thing. We're all here tonight to talk about the stuff that we are missing from it, but we do need to acknowledge that it is much better plan than it was before. I also have a specific comment to make, and I know that this is, you're looking for more general information, but I'm finding that the only place where these things can become public is in a meeting like this. So I would like to ask you to put your attention as a part of making changes in the plan to the Monte Vista Street, which is off Hunt and St. Helena, and consider upzoning it. Monte Vista is a 1-block-long street. It consists of 11 multi-unit buildings. It's approximately 63 units. All 11 properties are currently zoned medium density, and there's an average of by my calculation, there's an average of 19 units per acre, which just tips over the medium, just at medium density. Most of these buildings were built in the 1970s, and many, if not all of them, will be renovated or scraped and rebuilt in the next 20 years. I'm afraid that it's very conceivable that current or new landowners could decrease the density on those properties, and that would eliminate one of the only true working-class neighborhoods that we have left in St. Helena. If they were zoned high density, we could increase the possibility that the number of units overall would not go down. Now, it's a difficult situation because it's 11 different parcels, but it is a set community within the town. I don't know how to make that happen, but certainly somebody should be able to do that. I'm a property owner on the street, and I've had direct contact with many of the working families and the senior citizens that have lived on Monte Vista for over the last 3 decades. If these buildings are gradually eliminated and replaced by high-end, different kinds of buildings, still multi-use but high-end, over 200 people will eventually lose their ability to live in this town, to work here and to raise their children here. I would like to point out that I've been asking the city to consider this zoning change for over 10 years. I was told by a long ago previous city manager that that street was supposed to be zoned high density, but they made a mistake in the 1993 plan and the color coding, and so they left it as medium density. I don't know, that could be Safeway gossip, but that's what I heard. I was told unofficially in the 2016 updates that they couldn't do it because there was a threat of litigation from the East Side neighbors when we were going through that whole thing. Then this last iteration, I wasn't given the reason, but it still remained medium density, although other properties were made high density. It concerns me, and I want this to become public because I think it's really important. We spent 20 years wringing our hands about the amount of second homes that were built in St. Helena, but we didn't do anything about it. And now almost 50% of our single-family homes in St. Helena, many of which used to be moderate housing for working-class people, are now vacant second homes. So I think it would be important to make this effort not to lose Monte Vista. It is the only multi-unit working family neighborhood in St. Helena that's not part of a larger development. And I'm afraid it will be gone if this is not high density. So I'd like you to consider this neighborhood and how it could become, how you can keep it working class. And I see the only way to do that is to make it high density as you go about changing things in the general plan. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Stevenson. Thanks very much. Who's next? And
hello, everybody. Daniel Hale, 1851 Madrona Ave. I appreciate that we're having this meeting. I welcome it with a mixture of open-minded interest and also some measure of trepidation based on my experience. As we begin to study and discuss the post-adoption zoning code, I emphasize the word begin because I believe we're at the start of what I sincerely hope will be a transparent, good faith reset, one that improves both the understanding and the implementation of the municipal code. I apologize in advance for the density and occasional discomfort and length of my testimony, and I appreciate the time and attention required to fully consider it. This is simply my lived experience working within code. I've made a sincere...
And I might point out also, of course, your written comments are going to be fully on the record. So.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to read my whole thing. Trust me. To consider it, this is my lived experience. I've made a sincere effort to condense these comments to their briefest accurate form. I do not view this as a check-the-box exercise, but rather as the start of a substantive and ongoing discussion. At the outset, I believe it's important to acknowledge that there are at least two perspectives, possibly more, that must be considered in any meaningful review of the code. One is the staff perspective, focused on administration, process, interpretation, and enforcement. The other is the perspective of those who actively participate in and are directly affected by both the code and the process of implementing it as we create or reconfigure projects in St. Helena within the code's guidelines. Architects, designers, business owners, homeowners, and also members of the broader community who experience its effects as it shapes the environment that we value. These participants do not encounter code as an abstract document, but through its real-world execution, how it informs, constrains, and enables the built environment. A meaningful review must therefore consider not only how the code functions administratively, but also how it performs on the ground, where its impacts are most directly felt. Central to this discussion should be the quality and the nature of the built environment we're striving to preserve and thoughtfully shape. With that in mind, I believe it's appropriate to take an intentional pause and ask ourselves some fundamental questions. How are we doing? Have we accomplished the goals we set out to achieve? What remains unfinished and how much? And how do we structure a clear, transparent path forward? And keep in mind that no code, no matter how perfected, operates without the understanding and commitment by the individuals with the responsibility to safeguard and operate within its bounds. I've submitted into the record a condensed account of my experience across several projects, and I appreciate you taking the time to consider those. I believe we could host a workshop or an evening on any one of these individual items and many more besides, reconsidering ADUs and the approach to ADUs as strategy and a targeted housing strategy, and how that strategy relates to RENA strategy, but also towards the actual critical housing needs. We need to get beyond understanding that just a house is a house is a house, or a unit is interchangeable with any others. I think we have to be targeting some of the critical needs that we understand that we have. We assert that the general plan is supreme over municipal code, but do we understand the intricacies and how that supremacy operates? And when we find conflict between the two, the general plan and municipal code, what is the path to solve that conflict? I'm happily available if you all have any questions about any of the projects that I brought forward as case studies that are in the record, either today or in the future. You have my contact information. But thanks for your thoughtful attention.
Thank you, Mr. Hale, and I also might compliment you because you're a practitioner, and you've given us case studies that, although they may be specific cases pending or were pending before the commission and the city council, you provided, I think, comments on the details of how the code is applied generally. That's very valuable, in my opinion, and I really appreciate you providing those kind of practitioners' views. And I also value your approach to suggesting that this is not the only time or only meeting we should have to kind of dive into the details, the devil in the details, because you were very prominent in providing comments on the zoning code update itself. I went through the index of comments that you provided, and so I think it's very good for you to remain engaged on what I call the devil in the details. So thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Next person.
Good evening. Scott Gay, representing Cliff Family Winery at 709 Main Street, across from Farmstead. We've brought forth just the beginnings, a test fit of a project on our parcel that has tripped a couple items in the zoning code, and we wanted to begin the discussion. We do have the project in review with the city under their pre-submittal application, which has been.
Let me be fair. We cannot discuss tonight a specific project.
Fair enough.
We can discuss general issues associated with the code, but I want to be very fair. And again, to kind of repeat the reason for that is that we need to provide an opportunity for all members of the public to comment on a specific project, not just the project sponsor. So if you can tailor your comments to a more general issue under the code as opposed to your specific project, that would be very helpful.
Sure. I think, so for the code, as it affects the parcel outside of any project, is first off, the storage language, I think that Mr. Bell brought up about his restaurant as well, affecting us as a mixed-use zone parcel as well. Right now, at least the feedback in the presentation was it affect only the central business district, and I'd love to see that expanded into the mixed use as well. Pretty much any commercial operation will need storage. So just as a flat fact. The second goes to some setback issues along our parcel, along the eastern edge. The new zoning code requires a 10-foot minimum or 10-foot maximum setback off that eastern parcel edge. There is a public easement for utilities that runs under our parcel that is 10 feet wide. So per the code, we're effectively asked to put our building on the edge of the easement, which is not something I think Public Works would like to see either. We'd like to give it a healthy distance. The previous zoning of the parcel was service commercial, which I believe is somewhere in the 20-foot minimum requirement. But I think that's also something that in the general neighborhood of the parcels that surround us are mostly in a mixed, in a service commercial zone. So I think it's also sort of standing in conformity with just design and setbacks within our general community on that south side of town. So just to be aware of that. So thank you. Any questions?
No, thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Next commenter or input?
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Charles Covell, Park Street. And I have been involved in this process since the first stakeholder meetings and submitted numerous public comments along the way. And here we are. I had originally suggested not rewriting the entire code, but just improving the one that we already have to help at least achieve the goal of being able to compare what we had before to what we have now. And since it was completely rewritten, we were unable to compare side by side. And so we are still slogging through what's in here and trying to understand it as on-the-ground design professionals. And it's frustrating, honestly. But I'll try to limit my comments here. As I've mentioned, a lot of these are similar to ones I've already made in the past, but I'd like to focus tonight on the design standards, which are I'd like to take issue with something the director presented in earlier here, which was that the zoning code update was directed by the general plan to include design standards, but and I'm reaching back into my memory here, but I believe the general plan called for design guidelines. Design guidelines are non-binding, whereas the design standards are essentially laws that apply to architectural design. And it's sort of like laws that apply to free speech. This is architecture is a matter of it's an art, it's a matter of expression, and it's personal, it's to the owner of the property. And so I really think that the way these standards have been, it started out as guidelines. There was a meeting on May 5th, I believe 2020, where with Lisa Wise Consulting, where it was clearly presented that it's not in the purview of zoning code to dictate architecture. It nevertheless, the term guidelines started getting used interchangeably with standards in that meeting, and I believe including by the director. And soon, and of course the state has passed, I believe it's AB 330, is that the one that are
SB
requiring objective standards. And I applaud objective standards. I think that that is wonderful, but I think the objective standards should be limited to planning, and that architecture should be the realm of architects, design should be the realm of designers, and none of us were really consulted about any of these standards that were put into place that I know of. Maybe they were and I wasn't there, but I know there were committee meetings and things like that that I'm not, a party to, and it was all happening during COVID, where we couldn't really participate in the process easily. So I would still like to present my ongoing objection to including architectural standards in the zoning code. I think you can limit things. You can do a lot with planning, like with setbacks. I think there are plenty of things you can do in the realm of planning that don't necessarily have to start dictating design and form. So I also want to mention that I agree with Mr. Leong about water neutrality needing to be modernized before we continue approving new multifamily developments, because we are leaving a lot of money on the table by letting the way it is now, the funds that are generated by water neutrality are nowhere near what we need to use to improve the infrastructure that's already in disarray and disrepair. And then I want to point out another issue I'd like to take issue with is the ADUs not being counting towards density arena. I think the state law requires that ADUs are part of the calculation for RENA. And I don't think that's something that we have any even option to discuss. And I can vouch for ADUs I've designed that are being used for housing. They are not necessarily being used for pool houses and the like. And I have a neighbor who specifically wanted, when he found out, oh, we're talking about ADUs, and he says, oh, I can have an ADU, because he rents out rooms to CIA students, and he wants to build an ADU, and he wasn't even aware. So there hasn't even been a good faith effort by the city to help make people aware that they can have ADUs and they can rent them out and they can make some money renting ADUs to other people. So there's a market out there, and I think if the city really wanted to, we could get a lot of arena housing, which the state does stipulate can be counted toward low-income housing. And we have a lot we need to get. And then finally, I just would like to bring up, I think this is great. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight about these issues, because there are a lot of them. And I would encourage us to figure out a way to sort of more real-time address them, because there are so many in here. And it took a year to deal with that uncovered porch thing. And I think we need to develop a process where we as the community and design professionals can, in a more real-time way, address the problems that we encounter with the code as we find them. It takes a lot of our time. We've spent a lot of personal time working on reviewing the code that has been drafted and then passed. And I would love to see it a way for us forward to fix the things that we see, but particularly love to deal with those architectural design standards. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Koval. And I might just point out that you were one of several of the folks here tonight who participated actively in comments on the various zoning code update drafts. And I found very valuable the index of comments that staff prepared that actually went comment by comment through all your comments. Now, not all your comments were accepted, but I think it's valuable for all of us to go back over those comments, including what I noticed right there is your comment on design standards is right there in the index of comments. It was not adopted, but that doesn't mean the comments from back in 2023 and 2022 that those of you provided cannot be reconsidered. And I found for myself in reviewing the record, the specification of those comments, even when they weren't adopted, very valuable to me, and I hope they will be to our fellow commissioners, to kind of look back at what was considered at the time actively by staff and the council and what was adopted or rejected. And some of those things can come back up. So I appreciate the process by which we still have a full record of those comments, such as the comments you've made tonight. They're not, they haven't disappeared. They're still there. Thank you.
That gives me hope. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I appreciate the dialogue on this.
Thank you. Who else? Sure, you want to comment?
Can I just make one
You have a
comment?
relationship with the commenter, don't you?
Please don't forget to pick up our son in about.
Right. There you go. Okay, who's next for comments?
Good evening. My name is Joshua Park. I submitted a pretty lengthy written comment, so I don't have a lot to say to follow it up. I would say that the pool of people that you're talking to or have access to, we're all locals, and there's a lot of people outside of the community that submit plans for projects and engage with the zoning code. So if there's a way for you to reach out to a broader pool of people, it might be helpful, whether that's directly to people who have submitted. Send them an email and ask if they have any input. Otherwise, I would just say that we have a pretty damn good general plan. And a lot of that general plan, the language in it, specifically precludes developments that a lot of people have, rightfully so, a lot of issue with, just like the one that Mr. last name again? Leon was talking about. It may be worth taking a concerted effort to compare the general plan with the zoning code, line for line, philosophy, methodology, ethos, and find out, well, these things are pretty incongruent, these things work. Ultimately, it should be the driving force for what we're doing, and it seems like there's a lot of missteps in how the zoning code was drafted, so thank you.
And again, Mr. Park, I really appreciate you providing the detailed written comments you've provided and raising specific issues which you state affect the comparison of the zoning code update to the general plan. And I can assure you that's something that I will recommend that our commission look at to be sure we're taking into account your comments. So I really appreciate it. And by the way, you also were a prominent participant in commenting on the zoning code update way back in 2022 and 2023. I very much valued looking at the index of your comments that's in the record.
I'll second Charles's comment. It's kind of like a glimmer of hope or sunshine that you might take another comprehensive review, because there were a massive number of comments that came forward in that process that were just kind of put to the side without any real explanation or reason.
You want to?
Much of that was
Mr. Park, did you want to just come up to
Yeah,
the
no,
mic so we can have that for the record?
He's done. He's responding to me in part, more in process, and I do want to say that obviously I speak only for myself and saying the value of looking back at those index comments. I'd have to refer to when we have a later discussion among our full commission. But I did want to compliment you for the process of providing the written comments. Thank you.
Can I say one thing to his
Sure,
comment?
sure.
Thanks for your comment. You asked to compare the general plan and the zoning code. I've actually basically done a lot of that. And since this was a workshop to kind of talk about that, I would love to dive into this. and because I think this is what today was about. So I hope people would like to hear, as much as everybody is bringing up exact language and examples, I have literally highlighted very specific examples where not only did the people who wrote in today, I looked at it through the lens of many of the last things, and I am going to do this in a very, very specific but quick way.
Could we first make sure we get all the public
Yes.
comments in, and then you'll have an opportunity, I think, if you want. And I think others of us have reviewed the general plan as well, but let's first complete our public comments. Any other public comments? We may be right at the right time where you can jump in, Commissioner Covell. Any other public comments, input? Seeing none, again, I want to thank everybody for coming and commenting. And again, this is not the last step or session on this. We will have an ongoing opportunity for further public comments and input. I do like the idea of continuing to solicit from practitioners, those even outside the local area, that if you all have names of people who have been working in practice for actual local projects. I appreciate also that the business community has been represented here. I would hope that the downtown businesses that may have suggestions for how to improve the zoning code, just like we heard tonight, can also be available to provide their comments as well. But thank you for the public comments. I'll now bring it back to the commission, and I think what we were reserving some time for Commissioner Covell, who also was part of the original zoning code update comments back in 2022 and 2023. Commissioner Covell, would you like to provide some of your own comments?
I would like to. Charles, don't forget to pick up our son. Does anybody else on our commission have anything they want to say before they?
No, I think we're going to have a fulsome discussion certainly when we bring this back after we assemble all the comments and even solicit some more. So this is not the time for discussion or recommendations, as I said.
I'm just asking if anybody else would like
I understand.
to
I don't have any further discussion.
Okay, so I have come through the staff report, and I have come through the zoning code. One of the things I would like to, and I have also some documents, one of the things I would like to say in the general, in the zoning code, item 1706070, annual review. Am I speaking in this? At least once a year, generally in January, the Planning Commission shall conduct a comprehensive review of the general plan, map, and text, and report its findings to the City Council. So it's going to be January. I would motion to put onto an agenda item that we discuss the general plan per what it says in the zoning code. It's 1706070 annual review. And it's regarding the amendments to the general plan. So I read through the staff report, and I read through the zoning code, the general plan, and a few of the things that I wanted to understand is my purview is regarding the general plan. A lot of the comments here, I'm going to try to relate back to the general plan because I think that is important. On the first page of the staff report, it talks about predictability for applicants. I think that was also throughout some of the stakeholder meetings. That was one of the major reasons for rewriting the zoning code. I think if you look at the last meetings for applicants, the predictability, I'm not sure if it has improved or not. I think that was one of the real main concerns. So that is one area that I would like to really understand, especially given the Kid Ranch project that I watched, the course of the several years they had to get through this. It did not seem predictable at all. So if predictability is one of the goals, I would like to understand that. Neighborhood character, scale and mass. This is talked about in the general plan. Sorry, I've been literally reading, so it's just really important that I think where we talk about conflict means having to pull out multiple documents and analyze it, and there are significant conflicts. And it would require a real workshop to understand the depth of all the conflicts. The item that says reduce FAR here under the first cover page, it is technically not legal as far as the SB 33. I have printed it out, a section. SB 33, Chapter 12, Section 13, Chapter 12, 663000, B1. Notwithstanding any other law except as provided in subdivision 1 with respect to land where housing is an allowable use, an affected county or an affected city shall not enact a development policy, standard, or condition that would have any of the following effects. I'm going to skim through this, but it says, for the purposes of this subparagraph, less intensive use includes, but is not limited to, reductions to height, density, or floor area ratio. I'm pointing this out because this is indirect to Dan Hale's project, applicant project, where...
We should avoid talking about a specific project, please.
Okay, sorry.
That's not on
It
the
is
agenda.
not regarding his project. It is regarding the change of the word uncovered inserted into the zoning code. And this was, in effect, changing the floor area ratio, reducing it, thereby violating the SB 330. So that was one item.
Haven't we resolved that? If we have resolved that, can we just address things we have not resolved?
Yes, I'm moving on from this one. I'm pointing that out because I find another item that is illegal that I would like to point out. So,
and can I ask our city attorney if we're relating it to SB 330, isn't that a kind of a whole nother ball of wax? Because doesn't that have to do with also affordable housing, which is different than like a single residence?
I'd go a little bit further. We're not here to identify illegality. We're here to identify how we've done under the zoning code update, both from a process, both improvements, and where we need changes. If you could phrase your comments
Sure.
to not talk about illegality, but to talk about how things have worked out or have been applied, that would be helpful.
So in the way that our zoning code currently states, this is in the affordable housing program, I think it says that the requirement to construct and complete affordable units pursuant to this chapter shall not be satisfied by designating accessory dwelling units as affordable units. I think this goes to some of the things that people are saying here, that we can count ADUs towards housing. However, in our own zoning code, we have removed that from our ability, but state law, I think, allows us to do that. So this is where an area where I think the zoning code which is, I think, in your policy discussions in the staff report, opened up the policy discussion for ADUs to be counted. So, I mean, just going by what is proposed here says future city council policy discussion. I'm guessing you guys read that. So this is where it conflicts in the zoning code per what the, what is said in, that's a literal conflict right there.
Sure, so have we captured that?
Yes. and
Commissioner
it-
Covell, so that's good. So we've captured that as a topic that we need to
Yes.
discuss, right? I am agreeing that there's some issues we need to
Yeah,
talk about around that.
Particularly the word affordability in
ADUs.
the code versus
Okay, here's
SB
an-
330, so it's
I think we're all
captured.
on the same page here, especially regarding affordability. So here is one. The RENA is requiring us to do very low, which is 50%, low, 80%. I think, what is the word, moderate? I don't know. I don't remember. It's just the 50, 80, 100, 120. Those are the breakdowns. Our zoning code right now, this is in reflection to what we are trying to achieve, but the zoning code doesn't actually say it. When you sell a house, or if you're doing a housing development project, this is zoning code 1730030G. The owner-occupied affordable units, they don't require, so if you're developing housing that is for sale, it does not require any 80% or 50% AMI. So if we're opening up all of these housing sites for development and they do develop it for sale, there is actually no requirement for them to actually sell to 80% or 50%, which is why Spring Grove only has 100 and 120.
Is your question whether the RENA applies to private property sales, or is it some other question?
No, that's not a question.
What's the-
ARENA says that we need to provide a variety of housing, right?
Right.
I have it here. It's like
Housing opportunities.
housing opportunities, but
Not
there's
the housing.
there's a requirement for, if everybody wants affordable housing, here's how our zoning code is not helping us. We need to do 256 units. Very low income, which is the 50% AMI, 104 units. For low income, 59 units, that's 80%. That's the 80% AMI. We need 163 units just in those two sectors. That's 163 of 256 units. And if we're trying to create affordable housing to sell, our zoning code right now doesn't actually require, it says 50% is required to be at the 100% of median income. And then the other 50%, it says if one half of the affordable units required made available by the developer. So it gives, if you read these three sections, it's kind of giving the developer the choice of.
Commissioner Covell, I think I can clarify something that's not expressly stated. It is hidden in there, but all of the, whether it's for rent, for sale, all of these housing projects that are subject to the affordable housing section of the zoning code are required to bring forward an affordable housing agreement to the city council. And at that time, we determine it's like a development agreement. We negotiate. We can push up. Actually, we want you to provide more, or very low, or low in exchange for X, Y, or Z. So I think on face value, it'd be easy to misunderstand actually how all that across the RENA allocations actually really happens. And I'd be happy at another time to explain that to you and actually even show you an affordable housing agreement that we have approved in the past.
So, I mean, thank you for that. I think the thing that, is helpful is that there's this kind of negotiation, I guess, what it sounds like is a negotiation, but we've written zoning code that defines what we are kind of at minimum hoping to achieve. And I just want to say that, a developer pointed this out to me, that we don't require 80% or 50%. And that's why this is a loophole